Most evil actors of Hollywood's golden age. They were the stars, the legends, the icons of Hollywood's golden age. But beneath the dazzling smiles and the glittering facades, there was a darker side, a world of secrets, scandals, and surprising truths. You know their names. You've seen their faces on the silver screen. But what about the stories whispered behind closed doors? Join us as we explore the hidden lives of 10+ of Hollywood's most notorious actors, uncovering the real people behind the myths. Number 1. Kirk Douglas, 1916-2020. The unpopular Hollywood hero? Okay, let's dive into the complex world of Kirk Douglas. He wasn't just another pretty face, folks. This guy had a real fire in his belly, a passion for acting that burned hotter than the Hollywood spotlight. He was born into a world of turmoil, and that struggle shaped him in ways we can only imagine. But the stage, the silver screen, that's where he found his solace, his escape. His early days were filled with drama, both on and off the stage. He had this kind of larger-than-life persona, one that was both magnetic and a little bit unsettling. It's hard to separate the man from the characters he played. He was a hero, sure, but there was always this undercurrent of darkness, a hint of danger lurking beneath the surface. Now, there were rumors, whispers about his behavior, particularly surrounding Natalie Wood. Apparently, there was this incident when she was just a young girl, 15 years old. It's said that he invited her to his room, and things got a bit intense. It was all hushed up, but it resurfaced after Douglas passed. People were shocked, and rightfully so. But the truth is murky. Was it true? Was it exaggerated? We'll never know for sure. Both of them are gone now. Even without that dark cloud hanging over him, Douglas wasn't exactly a saint. He was, as he himself admitted, perhaps the most unpopular actor in Hollywood. He was known for his difficult personality, his controlling ways. His co-stars, even his close friend Burt Lancaster, would joke about his tough demeanor. There were rumors of affairs, of power struggles on set. He famously tossed the director of Spartacus to the curb after just a week, and he tried to call the shots on Stanley Kubrick during Paths of Glory. Can you imagine? But despite all that, he was a force of nature, a captivating performer who brought incredible passion to his roles. His struggles, his flaws, even his darker side, made him a fascinating figure. He was a contradiction, a complex character, both hero and villain, and that's what made him so compelling. Number 2. Mickey Rooney, 1920-2014. A blisteringly bombastic persona. Mickey Rooney. The name conjures up images of that mischievous grin, that boyish charm. But behind the screen, there was a different story, a story that paints a much less rosy picture. Rooney was known for his blisteringly bombastic personality, and it wasn't just on screen. He was, let's just say, not the easiest person to work with. He was abrasive, nasty, even rude. It wasn't just on set either. This was a guy who carried that attitude everywhere he went. It's hard to believe that such a lovable character on screen could be so difficult in real life. One particularly disturbing incident involved Elizabeth Taylor. He was filming National Velvet with her when she was just a teenager. The whispers were that he took advantage of her. He later tried to play it off, saying he hardly knew her, calling her entitled, questioning her talent. It was all a bit too much. Even after he passed away, stories kept coming out about how he mistreated people, how he made hurtful remarks about his colleagues. It was shocking, a stark contrast to the image he projected. So, why was Mickey Rooney so disliked? Well, it was a combination of things. His ego was out of control. His abrasive behavior rubbed people the wrong way. He was constantly clashing with his co-stars, directors, even fans. His personal life wasn't exactly a fairy tale either. He went through multiple marriages, had financial problems, struggled with substance abuse. It all added to the negativity around him. Then there was the transition from child star to adult actor. People weren't sure if he could shake off that cute kid persona. They questioned his ability to play serious roles. And of course, there was the whole breakfast at Tiffany's controversy. His portrayal of an Asian character was just plain insensitive. It perpetuated those harmful stereotypes, and people weren't having it. Mickey Rooney, it seems, was a complicated figure. He was talented, but his behavior left a lot to be desired. He reminds us that the world of Hollywood isn't always glitz and glamour. Sometimes the stars are just as flawed, as real as the rest of us. Number 3. Faye Dunaway, 1941. Tales of Chaos and Disdain. Faye Dunaway, the name itself evokes a certain aura, a glamorous sheen that comes with those iconic roles. But behind the dazzling facade lies a darker side, a story of chaos and disdain that's become part of Hollywood legend. Dunaway was known for her incredible talent, but she also had a reputation for being, well, a bit of a handful. There were rumors of her storming off Broadway productions, of physical altercations, of creating a toxic environment. It turns out, these whispers weren't just gossip. They were real. People who worked with her have shared stories of a different Dunaway, a side she kept hidden from the public. There were accounts of her striking people, not in a staged way, but for real. It was like something out of a film noir. One wig designer talked about how she once slapped his assistant's hand because she didn't like the way the hairpins were presented. It seems she had high standards, and everyone around her had to meet them. The chaos didn't just happen on set. There were stories about her odd behavior off-screen, too. The book, Easy Riders, Raging Bulls, tells a tale about her urinating into trash cans, refusing to flush toilets, and even tossing a cup of urine, allegedly, at Roman Polanski during an argument. Dunaway denied it all, calling it utterly preposterous. Even some notoriously difficult actors were shocked by her behavior. James Woods, a guy who's known for having a big ego himself, talked about how she once threw something at him on set because he ad-libbed a line. Even Bette Davis, who was known for her fiery temper, called out Dunaway as one of the most difficult people in Hollywood. So, what was it with Dunaway? Was it the pressure of fame, the desire for control? Whatever it was, it created a whirlwind of negativity around her. She was talented, yes, but her behavior stained her legacy, making her a cautionary tale of the dark side of Hollywood. Which of these actors surprised you the most with their dark side? Number 4. Orson Welles, 1915-1985. Candid Critiques and Cinematic Frustrations. Orson Welles. The name alone is enough to make any film buff's heart skip a beat. The genius behind Citizen Kane, a true visionary. But behind that brilliance, there was a different side to this Hollywood icon, one that was much less flattering. There were these recordings, lost for years, of Welles talking to his friend, Henry Jaglom. And in these private conversations, Welles let loose. He didn't hold back. He called Laurence Olivier dim-witted, Spencer Tracy vindictive, and even Charlie Chaplin, the comedy legend, a hottie. He wasn't shy about his disdain for Bette Davis, saying he couldn't bear to watch her act. And James Stewart? He thought he was a pretty bad actor. It's a stark contrast to the image we have of Welles. He was a genius, but he also seemed to have this cynical streak, a bit of a dark heart. Despite all his talent, Welles struggled with the studio system. He was always battling for funding, trying to get his projects made. He often had to work with limited resources, but he never compromised his artistic vision. There are some fascinating stories on those tapes about his encounters with other actors. He took Marilyn Monroe under his wing, trying to help her before she became a star. But even then, powerful studio guys like Darryl F. Zanuck dismissed her as just another stock player. Welles saw the same disdain for actresses like Bette Davis and Jennifer Jones, and he wasn't afraid to speak his mind. He called Jennifer Jones irredeemable and basically wrote Bette Davis off completely. Number 5. Errol Flynn, 1909-1959. From Tasmanian Devil to Hollywood Bad Boy. Errol Flynn. Just the name conjures up images of swashbuckling adventures, of daring escapes, of charming rogues with a twinkle in their eye. But behind the screen, behind the charisma, was a man who lived a life as wild and unpredictable as the Tasmanian devils he grew up with. Flynn was born in a land of kangaroos and adventure, a land that shaped his spirit. He was a wild child, always getting into trouble. Expelled from school, he landed in New Guinea, a land of intrigue and danger. He tried his hand at everything: diamond smuggling, pearl diving, even a little bit of acting. He had a knack for adventure, for bending the rules, for charming his way out of any situation. It was only a matter of time before he landed in Hollywood, the ultimate stage for his daring exploits. He was destined for stardom, but his life was a constant roller coaster. He was a master of deception, even landing a role at the prestigious Stratford-upon-Avon Festival. Warner Brothers saw his potential, and his Hollywood odyssey began. But even as his career took off, he couldn't escape his past. He was known for his love of adventure, for pushing boundaries, and sometimes that led to trouble. He was a man who lived on the edge, and that edge was a dangerous place. He had a run-in with a mob in New Guinea, a harrowing experience that, oddly enough, pushed him towards acting. He had this magnetism, this ability to captivate an audience, and Joel Schwartz, a Hollywood executive, saw it. He cast him as Fletcher Christian in the Wake of the Bounty, and that was the beginning of his Hollywood fame. But then came the scandal. In 1942, Flynn was accused of statutory rape. It was a major scandal, one that threatened to destroy his career. But even in the face of such serious allegations, Flynn didn't back down. He was arrogant, defiant. He was eventually acquitted, but the damage was done. Number 6. Peter Sellers, 1925 to 1980, the troubled genius behind the laughs. Peter Sellers, the comedic genius, the man who brought Inspector Clouseau to life. He was a master of disguise, of accents, of turning ordinary moments into hilarious spectacles. But behind the laughter, behind the brilliant performances, there was a dark cloud, a troubled spirit that made working with him a challenge, even for the brilliant Blake Edwards, the director of the Pink Panther films. Sellers was, to put it mildly, eccentric. He talked to his dead mother, carrying a shrine of her around with him. He was a man deeply affected by his past, haunted by his insecurities, and these demons often spilled onto the set. He had these wild mood swings, unpredictable behavior that made Edwards' methodical approach nearly impossible. Sellers believed his wild antics fueled his creativity. He was afraid that if he lost that spontaneity, the comedy would suffer. So he'd break into impromptu songs, change his character's lines mid-scene, and generally disrupt the flow of filming. It drove Edwards crazy, but he also knew that Sellers was a unique talent, a force of nature. There were times when they wouldn't even speak to each other, communicating only through their assistants. Despite the clashing personalities, their collaboration brought us some of the most iconic comedies ever made. 5 Pink Panther films, The Party. These are classics that stand the test of time. Sellers' genius shone through, even in the chaos. He was a troubled soul, but a brilliant one. He was a man of contradictions, a mixture of brilliance and madness, and that's what made his art so captivating. Do you think the scandals of these actors tarnished their legacy, or did their talent outweigh their flaws? Number 7. Milton Berle, 1908-2002. From television pioneer to SNL disaster. Milton Berle. Uncle Milty. He was a television titan, a pioneer who helped shape the very landscape of early television. He was a comedian with sharp wit, a charming personality, and a knack for zany antics. His weekly show was a cultural phenomenon. People would stop working, shut down businesses, just so they wouldn't miss an episode. He was that big of a deal. His popularity was incredible. People were obsessed. There were reports of movie theaters seeing a drop in ticket sales during his show because everyone was at home watching Uncle Milty. But time marches on, and even the biggest stars can fade. Berle's shine started to dim, and his career took a sharp turn for the worse when he was asked to host Saturday Night Live. Lorne Michaels, the show's creator, wasn't exactly thrilled with the idea. He had doubts, and those doubts turned out to be very real. Berle's performance was disastrous. He was over the top, trying too hard, and he wasn't open to direction. The cast and crew were bewildered. They were used to a certain type of comedian, a certain style, and Berle didn't fit in. One SNL writer called him one of the program's most challenging hosts. He was mugging for the camera, micromanaging everything, and it was all just too much. It just goes to show that even the biggest stars can fall from grace. And sometimes, the way they fall can be as spectacular as their rise. Number 8. Wallace Beery, 1885-1949, the unattractive everyman. Wallace Beery. You might know him from those heartwarming movies, the everyman roles that made him a Hollywood star. He was the kind of guy who seemed like he could be your next-door neighbor, the friendly face on the street. But that image, that persona, was carefully crafted by the studios. Behind the scenes, the real Wallace Beery was a different story altogether. He was a tough guy, a gruff individual who didn't mince words, and his treatment of his colleagues, especially young actors, was often cruel. Mickey Rooney, who worked with him on several films, talked about how Beery was physically aggressive towards him. It's hard to imagine that the lovable guy on screen could be so rough and mean in real life. But Rooney had this interesting perspective. He said that despite Beery's harsh behavior, he actually respected him. He recognized Beery's talent, his intensity. It was a complicated relationship, a mixture of admiration and fear. Gloria Swanson, another Hollywood legend, had her own run-in with Beery. She was young, just starting out, and Beery was a big star, a powerful figure in Hollywood. She was uncomfortable with his behavior, the way he treated her, the power dynamic between them. It wasn't a pleasant experience. And even in his private life, Beery wasn't exactly the charming guy he played on screen. He was known for being unappealing, even repellent. Even those who knew him best found him unpleasant. Number 9. Bing Crosby, 1903-1977. A Distant Father and Hidden Struggles. Bing Crosby. The voice, the charm, the songs that filled our hearts with joy. He was a legend, a true icon of Hollywood's golden age. But behind the smiles, behind the music, there was a different story. A story of family struggles and a quiet melancholy. Bing was a busy man, juggling his career, his movies, his radio shows, his music. He was always on the go, and that left little time for his family. His son, Gary, talked about how Bing wasn't really around during their childhood. He was a distant father, a man who feared the dangers of Hollywood, the temptations that could lure his children astray. He wanted to protect them, but in doing so, he pushed them away. It wasn't until Bing's second marriage that he seemed to make an effort to connect with his kids, but he struggled to express his emotions, to let them into his heart. Behind the fame and fortune, Bing Crosby was a man with his own set of struggles. His son, Lindsay, tragically passed away, and Bing battled alcoholism. His stoic demeanor, that reserved nature, never really went away. Even in his final moments on a golf course in 1977, he prioritized his game over expressing his feelings. He was a man who kept his emotions close to the vest, even in the face of life's greatest challenges. Bing Crosby was a paradox, a man who could captivate the world with his voice, who could bring joy to millions, but who struggled to find that same joy in his personal life. He was a distant father, a man who kept his heart locked away, a reminder that even the most beloved stars are human, with flaws, with struggles, and with a story that goes far beyond the music. What other notorious actors from Hollywood's golden age should be included in this list? Number 10. Henry Fonda, 1905 to 1982. The all-American hero with a troubled private life. Henry Fonda. The name itself evokes a sense of Americana, of rugged charm, of a kind of all-American hero. He was the guy who played the good guys, the righteous figures who stood up for what was right. He was the epitome of virtue on the silver screen. But, as often happens, the real story was much more complicated. Behind that screen persona, behind the charm, was a man with deep-seated flaws, a man who struggled with his emotions, and a man who strayed far from the image he projected. His personal life was a far cry from the idyllic American family he embodied on film. He was self-absorbed, uncomfortable with showing his emotions, and he was not the kind of husband or father you'd imagine given his on-screen persona. It turns out, Fonda had a long history of infidelity. He cheated on all but one of his 5 wives. It's a shocking revelation, a stark contrast to the values he embodied in his movies. He had affairs with some of Hollywood's most glamorous stars: Joan Crawford, Marlene Dietrich, Barbara Stanwyck. He even had a long-term love affair with Lucille Ball, but even then he wasn't faithful. He was a man who found it difficult to commit, to be truly present in his relationships. And his children, Jane and Peter, also felt the effects of his troubled personal life. They felt neglected, overshadowed by their father's fame. His first marriage to actress Margaret Sullivan was rocky from the start. She was a strong woman, and she didn't shy away from criticizing his shortcomings, even in the bedroom. And then there were the failed marriages, the divorces, the extramarital affairs. It was a whirlwind of chaos, far from the fairy tale we imagined. Number 11. Lee Marvin, 1924-1987. The bad boy of Hollywood. Lee Marvin. The name itself conjures up images of tough guys, of grit and danger. He was the bad boy of Hollywood, the kind of guy who could make your heart race with a single glance. And his off-screen persona matched his on-screen roles, making him a bit of a Hollywood enigma. He was known for his brutal characters, for his willingness to go all out. He even took up motorcycle racing professionally after filming The Wild One with Marlon Brando, even though he didn't know how to ride a bike before the movie. He embraced that bad boy image, and it stuck with him throughout his career. And then there was that iconic scene in The Big Heat, where he throws scalding hot coffee in a woman's face. It was so realistic, so brutal, that people started to see Marvin as a real-life villain. And, well, it wasn't that far off the mark. He was known for his wild behavior, his recklessness. He had a reputation for being a bit of a rogue, a guy who lived on the edge. He started an affair with Anne Bancroft while filming Gorilla at Large. It wasn't a fleeting thing. It was a full-blown relationship that carried over to their next movie, A Life in the Balance. All the while, his wife and kids were back home. Marvin struggled to break out of the shadow of those roles, of his bad boy persona. He wanted to be a big star, but his reputation and his behavior held him back. He had a hard time finding his place in Hollywood. He was a man of contradictions. He could charm women, like when he befriended Vivien Leigh, a legendary actress, and even tore up an antique deck of cards during a card game at her house. But his temper was just as notorious as his charm. He had a lot of enemies in Hollywood, people who found his behavior off-putting, even dangerous. Please comment 1 to let me know you'll be watching this video until the end. Number 12. Lupe Vélez, 1908-1944. A fiery temper and a tragic downfall. Lupe Vélez. She was a fiery, passionate woman, a force of nature who captured Hollywood's attention. She was a star, a dancer, a singer, a comedian. But beneath that dazzling exterior was a dark side, a tempestuous spirit that would ultimately lead to her downfall. Vélez was known for her wild personality, for her explosive temper. She was incredibly possessive, especially when it came to her romantic interests. One of those interests was the stoic Gary Cooper. Their relationship was a clash of personalities, a whirlwind of passion and jealousy. And Vélez's jealousy was a dangerous thing. It fueled her temper, leading to violent outbursts. One incident, in a crowded party, Vélez accused Cooper of sneaking off with another woman. She unzipped his pants right there in front of everyone, trying to sniff for cologne. It was a shocking display of her possessiveness and her recklessness. She wasn't just jealous of Cooper, she was jealous of other stars too. She had feuds with Greta Garbo, Katharine Hepburn, even child star Judy Garland. It was like she was always competing, always fighting for attention. Vélez was a talented actress, a dedicated performer, but Hollywood wasn't always kind to her. She was often typecast, stuck in limited roles because of racism and sexism. She struggled to break free from those stereotypes, to show the world her full potential. It was a tragic end for a star who burned so bright. Her fiery temper, her unpredictable nature, her struggles with jealousy, they all contributed to her demise. She was a woman of contradictions, a star who had a dark side, a woman who never learned to control her emotions, and in doing so, she destroyed herself. Number 13. Fredric March, 1897-1975. A misunderstood past and a name reclaimed? Fredric March, a respected actor, a Hollywood legend. He was known for his powerful performances, for his gravitas on screen. But his reputation took a hit when a story about his past resurfaced. It involved a student group at the University of Wisconsin-Madison called the Ku Klux Klan. This group, formed in 1919, was named after the infamous KKK, but it wasn't connected to the racist organization at all. It was just a student group, and it even changed its name in 1922 as the National KKK gained notoriety. But the damage was already done. Social media fueled the misconceptions, turning a harmless student group into a symbol of racism. People started to believe that March was a white supremacist, and the backlash was swift and harsh. The University of Wisconsin-Madison, his alma mater, was pressured to remove his name from their theater, the Fredric March Play Circle Theater, and in 2018, they did just that. Other institutions followed suit, like UW-Oshkosh. They renamed their theater too. It was a difficult situation, a misunderstanding that spiraled out of control. But as more information came to light about the true nature of that student group, people started to reconsider. In 2022, there were discussions about restoring March's name. March, throughout his long career, was actually a strong advocate for civil rights. He worked closely with the NAACP, a civil rights organization. His life was a testament to his commitment to equality. Number 14. Louis B. Mayer, 1884-1957, the controlling tyrant of MGM. Louis B. Mayer. The name itself carries a weight, a sense of power and influence. He was a titan of Hollywood, a man who built an empire, who shaped the very image of Hollywood itself. He was the co-founder of Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer, MGM, the studio that brought us some of the most iconic movies ever made. But behind the glamour, behind the glitz, there was a darkness, a controlling hand that shaped the lives of many stars. Mayer was a tyrant. He ruled his studio with an iron fist. He created a fantasy world, a self-contained city where his stars lived, worked, and played. He provided everything they needed, but he also controlled everything. He silenced scandals, enforced a strict code of conduct, and made sure that the public image of MGM was always perfect. But his control didn't stop at the studio gates. He invaded his stars' personal lives. He dictated their relationships, their marriages, even their diets. He molded them into his vision of perfection, turning them into pawns in his grand game. Judy Garland is one of the most tragic examples. She was a brilliant actress, a talented singer, but Mayer's control over her life was devastating. He put her through grueling schedules. He drugged her to keep her going, and he created a cycle of addiction and despair. She was just one of many stars whose lives were destroyed by Mayer's ambition and his thirst for power. Number 15. Alan Rickman, 1946 to 2016. Okay, let's talk about Alan Rickman, a name that chills the blood of movie fans and makes audiences gasp. He wasn't just an actor. He was a force of nature, a master of the dark arts. You know, that menacing, calculating villain who makes your skin crawl. He wasn't born into the Hollywood scene, no way. He came from humble beginnings in London, a guy who studied graphic design before he found his calling on stage. That's right, folks. Alan Rickman, the guy who embodied evil, was once designing ads. Talk about a transformation. But he didn't just become an actor, he became a force, a master of the craft. He took on that iconic villain role in Die Hard, Hans Gruber. Talk about chilling. He redefined the villain, setting the standard for bad guys for years to come. But he wasn't just about the darkness. He had a range, from the romantic ghost in Truly Madly Deeply to the noble Colonel Brandon in Sense and Sensibility. He even made us laugh in movies like Dogma and Galaxy Quest. This guy could do it all. But there was something special about his portrayal of Severus Snape in the Harry Potter series. He brought this complexity to the character, this depth that made you question everything you thought you knew. He was the villain you loved to hate, the bad guy with a good heart, a heart you only discovered at the very end. He was a man of many faces, a talented actor who left an indelible mark on the world of cinema. Sadly, he passed away in 2016, but his legacy lives on in the hearts of movie fans everywhere. We've uncovered the truth about their dark sides, the flaws that made them human, and the stories that went untold. What did you think? Did any of these stories surprise you? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to check out other videos in this series. Don't forget to subscribe and share Who Remembers with someone you know. As always, thank you so much for watching.